All right, I think that we're live. Check in. Let me know if you guys are hearing me, all that sort of stuff today. I've got a few figures that I need to really quick pull up, so talk amongst yourselves as people roll in, and we'll get going today. I've got a lot of ground to cover. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit difficult as far as various subject matter is concerned to actually show figures and stuff like that. And I have struggled with this week because I've seen a lot of things and I've wanted to do multiple videos this week, but it's just been every single time I've had the video ready to record. My phone, not yours, sorry. Every time I've had the video ready to record, I've just found a reason not to do the video. So what I wanted to do today was talk about some of those topics with you and have a dialogue where we could discuss these things and maybe release some of the pressure. Somebody says, I'm going to unsubscribe if we can't get a medieval Kurt thumbnail here soon. If you could describe for me what that is, then I would be very open to doing that. I do like medieval stuff. But for whatever reason, there's just been something that has kind of gotten in the way, or it didn't feel right to do the topic, or the information felt incomplete for me today or throughout this week. And today what I wanted to do was have a discussion with you guys about these various topics and see where you're at on them, because some of these things I am deeply wrestling with. Other things just don't add up to me. And I know that there's a lot of questions out there, and we will likely not get official answers for some of these things. So the first order of business today is usually live streams are sponsored by First Form. That is not going to be happening today. And I thought about it, and I basically was like, hey, look, this is, even though we're talking about some satellite information, we're not actually going to be looking at any of the actual violent imagery or anything like that. I just don't feel that it's right to have a sponsor on the channel. I have even taken off, like, all the branding is off today. So what I will do is, instead of the usual giveaway that we do each week for these live streams, we'll just do a double one next week's to kind of compensate you guys. I appreciate you tuning in, and I know that is a component of the live streams, and I want to keep that going. It's just I don't feel that it is appropriate. I still have to monetize this thing, because otherwise nobody will be able to find it. That's just the way that it works, but that is the bare minimum that must be done, and that is all I am doing to I suppose have any capitalistic input into this, because I don't feel that gaining from someone else's demise is a problem. Somebody says, please, for F's sake, let's discuss the engravings. We will discuss the engravings. We obviously don't have any images of the engravings, but we will be discussing the engravings today. So the first thing, I suppose, is like I said, normally we do that and it's based on a joke or something like that. There's like very little to joke about in today's live stream, so we're just not going to be doing that today. So the first thing that I wanted to really talk about as people roll in is I put up a poll last night, And by the way, YouTube's being very screwy lately. We still haven't gotten to the bottom of what's going on. It's been going on for a couple months now. If you guys would help interact with the video in some way, it definitely does help. So anyway, to the first figure here. The question that I had and I posed to you folks is, when it comes to political violence, who is actually responsible for it? I see a lot of this thrown around online where people have said the only person responsible for this is the person who actually pulled the trigger. And I do not believe that to be the case. I'm a very uniform application of logic person. And I don't think that, and I know this is used a lot, but were the folks from WW2 in Germany, was it just the people on the ground that were actually perpetrating the heinous acts, or was it also the fault of the leadership? I think that history tells us that it was all of the parties involved. And if you uniformly apply the logic, those that incite violence are also responsible for it. Now, are they legally culpable? In this country, the way that our laws and rules work, as far as our legal system is concerned, there has to be something considerably more definitive than what is currently being targeted as directed speech. So, and I would put this in terms of, it's like some of the situations you see in other countries where people from other lands come in, they very closely understand where the legal limits are, and they walk right up to that line to incite folks. You saw that that whole thing with the girl with the hatchet and machete and stuff in the UK, where those people started filming that specifically because there were weapons brandished. They knew that they were going to get her in trouble over that whole thing because they knew that she crossed their line. So when I would say in the United States, we have a right to free speech, but that right to free speech does not insulate you from some of the consequences of using that speech. And like I said, can some of these folks that are calling for certain particular, what I would say, broad behaviors to occur, can those people be prosecuted in the United States? Not really. It has to be specific for that to invoke the ire of the law, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for that particular thing. You've seen a lot of folks out there who have been reported about celebratory posts online and them getting fired. You've seen calls for various people to be deplatformed. And I struggle with that concept because in America, we have a continuum, what I call a continuum of liberty. You have the right to life, and the right to life trumps the right to liberty, and it then trumps the right to pursuit of property. So if your pursuit of property, which to put it in terms of like capitalism or monetized streaming or whatever it is, the right of someone to use their First Amendment right to speech to gain property, to monetize their speech in particular ways is 100% legal, provided that it does not infringe first on somebody else's liberty, and someone else's right to life. So when I think of myself as, hey, the Constitution is sacred, and we've got a First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third, Fourth, Fifth, on down the line, we always hear about these limits of these rights. And my question to you guys, are certain people who are out there calling for broad activities to occur to their political enemies, even though it's not specific and they can't really be touched by law, should those people be allowed to continue to spew that rhetoric on various platforms because they are insulated from law? They have the right to free speech, but what is the consequence of that? And I don't think that it is very difficult to see the black and white difference between what Charlie Kirk was actually out there doing and what the people that didn't like him were saying that he was doing and what resulted from it. So I have to ask you guys these questions because I see the important pillars of free speech, freedom of life, liberty, and pursuit of property. I see that continuum. But we know that these people know where the line is. You can see them put on live streams to 40, 50, 60,000 people. Young, impressionable minds of mush that are, these people are out there spewing these communist ideals where they believe that people on quote unquote our side, pro-American, pro-freedom people, should have things done to them. And I can't show you any of this stuff because if I were to actually pick up some of these clips that you can find on X and various other places of people reposting for the purposes of outing these folks, if I were to publish those clips, my channel would be removed from this platform. I guarantee you the stream would be shut down if I played some of those clips. But they can still be on here and on other platforms, even though YouTube has policies about your activity on other platforms as well. So my question to you is, what do we do about that? And I think that I have a solution for this. So what I would like you guys to do is follow me on X. First step. Follow me on X. My handle is at VSO Gun Channel. You can also search my name, Curtis Hallstrom. And what I want you to do is, if you find an instance of one of these whack jobs doing something like this, I don't want you to share it to my page. I want you to take a few extra seconds and I want you to record the specific instance so that you have the video. And then I want you to post it on your X profile. And I want you to then quote tweet me so that I can find it, so that I can click on my replies and go find it. Because I have some folks that work at various places that are very interested in particular things that are being said and particular types of rhetoric that are being used to weaponize the limits of not only our legal system, but what is being done off of the actual attorneys and judges and cops and all that sort of stuff. Again, you've seen people be fired. The other point that I wanted to make on this is, if you've got those folks that are out there celebrating, you have video of those people celebrating. There's a video that I put up on my X profile yesterday where it's about how HR departments have been captured in many instances, and maybe reporting those folks to HR departments is not necessarily the correct way to go. Perhaps the correct way to go is to report those incidents to occupational health and safety, so an actual government entity. That's a very good video. You should go watch it. I think that it might be part of the way. But I guess what I'm saying is this whole situation has created a very, very slippery slope. And while I do believe that something needs to be done, we do need to make sure that we are not the people that are out there retaliating in any physical sense, but there are things that we can do to ensure that something like this never happens again. And the solution to that is not curtailing people's rights. It is staying within the limits of those rights, which feels really gross for me to say. I suppose the other thing about that is when it comes to, real quick point on the OSHA versus HR thing. HR reports are not anonymous. OSHA reports are anonymous. So, okay. You guys blew up this chat. I apologize. I got a little bit on a monologue there. So I missed a whole lot of stuff. There is an initiative going on that I'm somewhat aware of where somebody is doing something similar, but I don't know that those folks have any kind of direct communication capabilities with anybody at any place, right? Because that's what it comes down to is, okay, we can publish that information, but what is done with it? So report it where you find it. So the first thing, so now off of that whole thing, I guess, what I will do actually really quick while I'm thinking about it, is I will go and find that video and I will pin it because there are some very important nuances there. Like you can't just like see a random person do that and report it to OSHA. You have to actually like work there. So let me go to my actual profile really quick and grab the link. Sorry, I tried to prepare for today's live stream, and I just continuously found myself adding more and more content, and it was just not going to be doable. So what I have done is I have now posted and pinned that video for you guys to go watch. I have posted and pinned it in the live chat so that you guys can run that down if you would like. So I would like to get off of the, obviously, like I want your guys' opinion on that, but I have to move along because I keep dwelling on the circular logic of like, okay, well, those people should be deplatformed, but then who determines what the limits of that are? And while we talk about deplatforming those people now, what does that mean for the future? And I don't know. I think that the right thing to do is find some kind of limit for that, but who determines what that is the problem. So anyway, I would like to move on to some of the things that were reported this week, and this kind of all sort of links together. The first thing I would like to do is show you, I need to go to my Photoshop for this. The first thing I would like to do is show you the reported weapon, because there's a lot of stuff that did not add up when it came to what the FBI is telling us. And that is really the meat of what I wanted to do in today's video, is something don't add up. And I don't know if that is like some smokescreen stuff for the purposes of getting deeper in the investigation. As in, like, do they say that these are particular things as in misdirects so that the the actual information that they have can be acted on better. Like the whole, like, we believe he acted alone when we know at this point in time he probably did not act alone. He probably had an accomplice. So to kind of flesh that out, this weapon that we have here, there are some very strange things about this. First of all, the first thing that I saw was that the scope looked really strangely set up. Like, you should be looking for somebody with a black eye when you're searching for the dude initially, right? And obviously he's been apprehended, but the eye relief on this thing is set up strange. You'll notice, so actually let's go back to the a leftist. We know that he had leftist ideology. They had particular writings on his bullet casings that espouse such things. We know that he was living with a boyfriend. Like, there are several things that pack onto this. There's plenty of evidence that they will try to dissuade you away from the fact that he was a leftist. Confirmed reports from people who knew him and all that sort of stuff. But we also know that his family, by and large, were, shall we say, gun-toting people. Folks like us, okay? He was raised around weapons. So for him to not be able to set this up, what I would say properly, seems strange to me to see this set up so strangely. And initially, I just assumed, before we knew any of that other information, that this was poster child, idiot leftist that doesn't know what end the bullets come out of type thing. But I actually think that it's considerably more sinister than that. Because when we go, for instance, to the video or the evidence of how did he get the weapon in and out here in a minute, I think it will become apparent. But you can see here, obviously, that this is a weapon that is not easily broken down. And I have looked, I've scoured the internet trying to find a composite stock like this that has some kind of QD capability. And I can't find it. There are chassis that exist out there that allow you to pull the weapon apart quickly. They do exist. I cannot find one that looks like that. All right. And I've searched probably 10 hours trying to find a product that matches that kind of description that would allow you to pull the thing apart in a matter of seconds and stow it. So the only thing that I can come up with when it comes to if that is the weapon, that he did not break it down, and how did he get it in there? There are some reports, and this doesn't make any sense to me. I was watching it live when I was, watching and listening to it live when I was driving home, where it was Sean Hannity sitting there talking about how, look at this. He's walking weird, and he's got He's got something in his pants, and that's got to be the rifle. He's limping because he's got the rifle in his pants. Tell me that there is a 30-06 stuffed in this dude's pants. Please tell me that in those skinny jeans, also over here you see that this leg is bent. This leg is bent. So while you might be able to convince me that there might be something here, that same leg being bent here tells me that that isn't possible. Okay? Also, you have to remember that this is a 40-ish inch rifle. I went down to the vault and tried to find a rifle that was over 40 inches. The reporting number, depending on how the weapon is configured and what barrel length and all that sort of stuff it has, it's supposed to be 44 inches if it's the Mauser that they're reporting. I tried. I have a pair of pants that I use for beekeeping that are 4 sizes too big, and I tried to get a rifle in there, and I couldn't get it done, right? Obviously unloaded and all that sort of stuff. Could not conceivably in any way hide that weapon. Whoever came up with that idea is brain dead. Now, what could possibly be plausible here is you'll notice that this, I wouldn't say sizable backpack, right? I wouldn't say sizable backpack, but it is a rather, it's not a normal book bag, all right, like you would use for school, right? It's not like any backpack that I used for my books when I was in college, right? But there are some tells here. Look how low those straps, look how low these straps sit on his shoulders. That tells me something heavy is in that backpack. Now, granted, that rifle will not fit in that backpack. Even broken down, that rifle, if you broke it in half, you could not get the stock and the barreled action into that backpack. It's not possible. However, what you might be able to do is anchor it to that bag. And what might be going on is that bag might be modified in such a way that perhaps that whole thing about him limping while coming to the event is the barrel sticking down the top half of his leg and the rest of the gun being in behind that backpack somehow. That I'm willing to buy. Now, in order to do that, there would have to be some modification also of his clothing, because you can see that the backpack is on over top of the clothing. So in order to do that, the big lumpy bits contained in the backpack, the more slender barrel tucked into or through his shirt into his waistband down his leg, possible. I'm willing to buy that. But I think what is more plausible is somehow that weapon was staged elsewhere. And I will explain when we go to the roof here in a minute. But first I want to go back to the shot of the rifle. I said earlier that that at first I saw this scope set up and I'm like, oh, what an idiot. You know, the rings aren't high enough. You can't turn the safety on. The ring is set back. It is clamped, but it's set back. The scope is literally touching the strut there. Who mounts a ring all the way up against the turrets? He's going to need an eye patch, you know, et cetera, right? At first, I just assumed that was idiocy. Standard leftist idiocy. But then I got to playing downstairs and I grabbed one of my larger backpacks that I've collected over the years and I took my bolt action rifles with scopes, with similar stocks and things, plus or minus. They're all roughly the same. Some might have longer lengths of pull, you know, depending. And I tried to put them in that backpack. And you can't even really do what I described earlier if the rifle is set up properly. But it's pretty close. And if you set your rifle up like this, which is completely ass backwards and wrong, then you very well might be able, because you can see in this image here, you can see there's not something special on the back here. Is that the terminus of the photo? Yeah, there we go. You can see here the starts of that that rubber butt pad. This curve right here would be indicative of the rounding of the. And so, like, right there, it's difficult to see, but that is shadow right there. Yeah, that's not going to work. That is a point of shadow. The stock actually stops right here. So this is what I would classify as a standard kind of composite stock. Again, that can't be readily detached, so we can't just strip the weapon. But if you're measuring this distance to this distance, then it is conceivable that he might be able to smash that, particularly if he were to cant the rifle sideways diagonally ever so slightly in that backpack. He might be able to sweep it in there and be able to zip up part of it. Now, it gets a little bit complicated for me when it comes to getting the weapon in that way. Personally speaking, I think that it was staged there. We do have reports that he was discovered on the roof prior to the incident by someone and was not reported. I think that might have been some kind of staging event, and we'll go to the roof here in a minute. But when it comes to him leaving, there is no lead time between him getting up and taking off across the roof and getting off the roof, and he doesn't fiddle fuck around with the rifle or anything like that. And it's a grainy video that looks like it was taken on a potato, granted. But let me go ahead and pull this thing up so we can watch it. Let me make sure that it's in the right spot here. Hang on. When you see him get off this roof, there's some fishy stuff going on here. And I think that a lot of people watch this. Where's my thing here? I think a lot of folks watch this and they say, well, where's his rifle? Well, did I not edit this together properly? Oh, you know what? I didn't. That's the wrong video. Sorry, hang on. That was the raw video. I have to go back and get the actual. Sorry, your host is incompetent. I basically took this video and edited together a whole bunch of times so that we could watch it on loop. Here we go. So I basically just took this and took multiple takes of this so that it would just sit there and we could just rerun it. So if you watch him on the roof here, you see he basically, there's a whole lot of discussion about, well, where's the rifle? Where's the rifle? He doesn't have a rifle. He's not carrying a rifle. When we go back to what in the chat, somebody says, please don't show the shooting. We will absolutely not be showing the shooting today. We can't show that on a live stream. And I think that we've all seen it enough times that we don't need to watch shooting again. But if you watch him get off of this roof, people ask where the rifle is. And I would say, look at that bag that he is carrying and how it is acting. Conceivably, the video is, somebody says the video is kind of cut off. Look, man, this is what we got. This is the actual video. The video resolution is not the greatest. right? It's not a standard format video. You're used to watching 1920 by 1080. This thing was in 660 something, right? So like we're working with video that is not designed for this purpose. So he gets down, he's got the bag laying down. Here, let's pause it there. So he gets down, he pauses, he puts the bag down. You'll notice that the bag disappears when he lays it down. So he's got the bag in his hand. He comes up. It disappears. How does it disappear right there? That tells me that there's got to be some kind of shelf here between these two. And sometimes those flat roofs will have an integrated gutter. There's the flat of the roof. There's something here where the rifle disappears. And again, we're talking about, we're talking about video taken with a potato. And then the side of the building here. I think there's probably some kind of gap here, because you will see that when he drops himself down, that bag kind of like rematerializes. He pulls it out, and it acts heavy when he comes out. When that bag comes out of that dark spot, the bag acts heavy. Now, granted, we don't see 44 inches sticking out of that bag, but you might have concealed up to the scope, and then the other half of the weapon is kind of like hanging out the top. It would not surprise me if he got up from his shooting position. We have reports that this rifle was wrapped in a towel. I think there was probably maybe that towel was in the backpack to provide some kind of volume so that he could use that bag as a shooting rest while proned out. But it's not a stretch, particularly with that rifle scope set up the way that it is, that it was set up in order to be able to fit into the bag for egress. Again, in the chaos, he's just got to get, knowing our timeline, he's just got to get to where he drops the bag without somebody discovering the rifle. If you look at how he carries this bag when he runs off, here, let me, stream figures. If you look at how he carries this bag when he runs off, he's carrying it like there's something in it. So he's gonna pick up probably his hat. He's carrying it. This thing loops a couple times. Yeah, here we go. He picks it up, takes off running with it, and he's carrying it in a low carry. Not like an empty backpack with a towel in it or something like that. And he's kind of holding it. You can see it right there. He's kind of carrying it on his side, kind of like this. And if he's wearing black clothing with a black barrel sticking out of the top of a black backpack, again, he's just got to get where it's not like he's trying to conceal this long term. As far as our timeline is concerned, he's just got to get that to wherever he dumps it. That's how I think that he got the rifle off of the roof without, and again, we're talking about shitty video here. On video quality like this, you're not going to be able to see a couple pixels wide of a thin rifle barrel sticking out of that on video like this. It's just not gonna work. So I don't buy the rifle coming in the pants, at least not stuffed in the pants. Maybe anchored to the backpack with the rifle barrel going down his right leg, terminating somewhere around his knee. That could explain the whole limping behavior where he's not able to completely bend his leg. But the idea that you've got a 44-inch rifle stuff down his pants. Like, even if you just do simple math, I wear a 30-inch inseam pant. That means that I've got 14 inches of rifle sticking up out of my pants. Tell me, in this image here, that he's got 14 inches of rifle with a scope on it sticking out of his pants. That bulge right there, people are like, well, there's the stock right there. I'm like, no, that's bullshit. There is no way that a rifle stock fit down those skinny jeans to that point. And then on top of that, where is the rest of the gun? There in the front. You can see he's got an iPhone or something like that in his pocket. Like, there's no way that that happened that way. I'm sorry. Now, when it comes to coming off back it up for a second. I would say likely either it was anchored behind that backpack because of the weight that we're seeing with the backpack images that I showed you earlier. It was anchored off of that thing hanging down and partially concealed inside of his clothing, or more likely, in my mind, it was staged there. He was already seen on the roof prior to the event. So I think that it was likely staged there, and then because you also have to think about, like, gaining access to the roof. There's going to be people around the buildings and stuff like that. You can even see, actually, you can't see it in any of these photos, but one of the other videos, or one of the other photos that was taken, you can see somebody's white shirt sleeve in the image while he's walking up the stairs. Getting that close to somebody makes it more likely that you'll be detected if you're concealing something big like that. So I think the rifle was staged in a pickup location, either on the roof or on the way to the roof somehow. I've never obviously been inside this building. I don't know if there's any kind of like places that he could have stowed it in. Like some of the buildings when I was in college had lockers in them still that would have been able to fit something like that. So I don't know the intricacies of that because I obviously don't know the inside layout of this building or anything, but that's just all conjecture. I think it's more plausible that the rifle was staged in the building ahead of time and that he used the backpack to egress it. Because here's the other thing. Even if he did have one of those rifles, let's just say that he came up with some kind of home brew kit that allowed him to break this weapon down. You go back to this original image here that is supposedly, it's assembled. So he disassembled it, got off the roof, left with it, then reassembled it and put it in the, and it didn't make any sense to me. I suppose you could argue that the FBI reassembled it. That would be pretty bad form on their part, although we've seen a lot of ineptitude FBI lately, so maybe perhaps actually we need to go back to that for a second. The other question that I have, and you guys may think that I'm a conspiracy theorist for this, why is it dark outside? You can see that there are two flashlight blooms, one here and one here, from two different cops standing there. This look here looks like it's part of this bloom, and this one here looks like it's part of this bloom, right? Two blooms on the thing. This image was released at like 5 p.m. my time. That means it's like, it should be like 3 hours difference or something like that. So that means it would be like 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Utah, right? I think that's the way that the mount. It's either 2 or 3 hours. I'm pretty sure it's 3 hours difference. Why? is it dark outside if this image was released then? So I've got serious questions about this and whether this is whether this is actually the thing or not. We've seen some pretty piss poor reporting and information dumps from the FBI as of late. And I don't know. Let's see. And then, should we do armor? We're not going to show the video. You know what I'd like to do really quick is have a discussion about Charlie. We're not going to show any images here because I think we've all watched the video enough. It's seared into my memory. I've watched it hundreds of times, analyzing it, which is really kind of ruined my week. And I think that you all have seen enough images of it. There is a lot of argument about whether he was wearing armor or not. And I guess I have to address something really quick before I have to address something really quick in the chat before we move on to the body armor thing, because there are explanations for why it was shaded. As somebody who works with cameras and stuff like that, I'm assuming that these are not really nice photo cameras that the police are using. I'm assuming it's some kind of digital camera, because this image looks like shit. So I can't imagine this was taken with a high resolution camera. So perhaps they were lighting it for the purposes of the camera so that it could take a better image. Could be cloud cover. It was supposedly recovered in a forested area, which could have given overhead cover to create some shade. The only problem with that is if they're using even something like this, that even if there is some pretty heavy shade, then these things usually auto adjust. And if that was the case, then those blooms would be considerably more pronounced than that. In my opinion, looking at this looks fishy to me, although I am willing to buy that it was overhead cloud cover paired with overhead canopy. I'm willing to buy that. But the previous questions about how the rifle got in, how the rifle got out still exist. We need some more definitive on that. Now, when it comes to armor, there's a discussion about armor online and whether he was wearing armor. I watched the video and I talked with some of my friends in the industry, and we talked about whether he was wearing armor. Charlie Kirk was known to wear armor on a regular basis. In fact, his wife insisted that he wear his armor regularly. We know that there are images of Charlie without armor on at this event. We don't know when those images were captured in the timeline. There's also some other images that seem to suggest that he was wearing armor anatomically. How he was sitting and everything looks kind of funky. That would indicate that he was wearing armor. And I see a lot of people out there that are trying to blame the armor for Kirk's death. As in, the rifle round came in, reflected off of the armor and induced a mortal wound. That may be the case. Initially, I thought there might be some armor involved there, just based on how the torso reacted and all that sort of stuff. It's entirely plausible that it is. But I think that what we need to do is walk that back a minute and understand that if this narrative is what actually happened, as in somebody took a shot at him with a 30-06, and they were able to put a hit in the chest to activate that armor, and anywhere that is conceivable that that 30-06 round could hit that piece of armor and reflect up and hit him in the neck and sever his artery and vein in his neck, any shot placement that results in that scenario being the truth, if the armor wasn't there, he still got shot in the chest with a 30-06. So I think that one thing that we're very into torching folks these days, myself included, about some of the rhetoric and some of the things that people do in the Second Amendment space that are uncouth. But I've seen this kind of like insidious thing in here where people are like saying if he would be okay if he wasn't wearing that body armor. The man still would have been shot in the chest with 30-06. Okay, so whether you are going with the direct neck shot with a 30-06, which I don't believe that the video is indicative of a direct neck shot with a 30-06, having shot lots of shit with 30-06 over the years, I don't believe that wound is consistent with that based on the video and the images that we've seen. Do I think it is plausible that that is some kind of refractory wound from a plate being hit and it bouncing off and hitting him in the neck? I'm willing to buy that more. I've seen people say stuff like, oh, the bullet hit something else on the way and then... No, that did not happen. That's a 1 in a million where it hit like people were like, oh, well, you know, it hit the tent and it bounced and hit. I'm like, I would not place bets on that personally if that was me. Am I willing to go to the direction of him wearing some soft plates? Because soft armor has different behavioral characteristics. I have shot soft armor with rifle rounds, and it very much depends on what kind of rifle ammo we're talking about here. If we're talking about soft point hunting ammunition, then at 200 yards, if you've got an oblique angle to a piece of soft armor, that soft armor can partially capture and then squirt the bullet out other places. It's not rated to stop that, but if the armor's sitting here like this and the bullet comes in kind of like this, it can do weird stuff like that where it penetrates a layer or two and then kind of, as it kind of mushrooms out just a little bit, it kind of veers and kind of follows the line of the armor and finds some weird way out. There's possibilities there, but we have to also understand that in all of those scenarios that we're talking about, whether it was soft armor, ceramic plate, AR-500 plates, whatever you want to put in there, right? If he hadn't been wearing that thing, if he was indeed wearing body armor, you have to remember that the man would have taken a 30-06 to the chest. All of the scenarios don't look good. So we should definitely not be blaming any kind of armor manufacturer for this sort of thing. Like, that doesn't make any sense in any book that I've got here. I don't buy that. I don't believe that he wasn't. The chat says he was wearing dragon skin. I don't believe that he was wearing dragon skin. I have some dragon skin. I don't believe that that's the case. Dragon skin, depending on how it's made and who makes it, could stop those rounds. Dragon skin, there's some stuff in the chat here about dragon skin and how it does things. Hard armor is supposed to catch and break up the bullet. So your ceramic plates, they break up and rapidly slow that projectile. And then like your ceramic plate will also have, depending on how it's made, it will have some kind of medium to catch that bullet. Sometimes that's polyethylene, high density polyethylene. Sometimes that is a literal piece of steel that's back there. It really depends on how the manufacturer is made, or how the manufacturer makes it. Most of the time, the dragon skin has some kind of flexible material on the back that is designed to catch it, usually a polyethylene, that high density polyethylene, to catch that stuff. We've shot dragon skin on the channel here before. Some people, so yes, to answer the question in the chat, some people think that this was SPAL and all. I don't think it's consistent with SPAL. I think that it is consistent with possibly a round that was reflected somehow into the neck region. I do not believe that it is consistent with a direct neck shot, having watched the video far too many times. First of all, we would expect considerably, I mean, it was a horrific injury, don't get me wrong, but we would expect considerably more damage than what we saw. There's no exit wound that I can see, which is also not indicative of a direct neck shot. We do see some strange behavior with the chest. Again, we're not talking about, I've seen people say things like, you can see the bullet in the frames and all that. No, you can't. I've analyzed thousands and thousands of thousands and thousands of videos over the course of my career where we're looking at frame by frame, trying to see bullets, and maybe we've caught one or two ever. People reference the thing about like Trump, the bullet being caught in the Trump assassination attempt. You know, that image, that was a very nice camera that was being used at a very high frame rate, and he still just barely caught a little bit of a. To be able to capture that sort of stuff, you have to go and have a camera like the guys from Ballistic High Speed and those guys use. I mean, we're talking about cameras that cost six figures, not your iPhone. Which brings me up to more misinformation when it comes to the audio signatures. Almost every video that you've got from the dog hair on my phone, almost every video that we have of the incident was filmed on something like this. And as somebody who does video editing and audio editing and all that sort of stuff, this is really good for like macro shots and changing environments as far as like video and stuff like that is concerned. Variable frame rate video has awesome uses. One of the things that these things are terrible for is audio signatures. So if you re-listen, and we're not going to play it here because it's, you know, you should go listen to it yourself on your own time. If you listen to the audio, you hear the supersonic crack, which tells me that this is a bullet that's going over the sound barrier. And then you hear some kind of report in the background. Now, those signals get smashed together because the microphones on these devices are not meant to capture that sort of stuff. There are microphones out there that are designed to capture very fast, very loud things. This ain't it. And those microphones themselves can cost anywhere like $20,000. Like, I do gun stuff on video all the time. I don't have one of those. The most expensive microphone that I have is $1,000, and it ain't that one either. And it doesn't even come anywhere close to being able to differentiate sound signatures. You've seen it so many times. I've seen it so many times where I'm out there like shooting suppressed guns and people are like, wow, that sounds really loud, blah, 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 blah. And it's because the audio has its limits. So what you heard in most of those videos was a supersonic crack that does not sound like a full rifle report, because they typically don't sound like a full rifle report as a bullet passes by you. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you do this, but there are classes that you can go to where you can experience this sort of thing, where you can experience the phenomenon and know what that is in a safe, controlled environment. That sound is the sound of the bullet going by, and then you hear a report back there somewhere. Remember, this is supposed to be like 200 yards away. And when you're listening to video or listening to audio that was recorded on something like this, that really loud thing goes by the receiver on this thing, and it clips. There is a refractory period on all microphones when they clip. Some are better than others. Some have shorter refractory periods than others. But that audio clips, and then it takes it takes some unit of time for it to fully recover. So you may not be able to pick up the full audio signature because this thing is constantly figuring out what's coming into it so that it can auto adjust the audio gain down. So it just had a really loud thing go past it, a sonic boom that went off. Whether your ear picked it up as something expressly loud or not, and the truth of the matter is it's a very loud thing, but it's very short time period that it goes by. This thing is trying to autocorrect for that, and then you don't get the full sound signature, and it all kind of gets smashed together, and then, of course, you've got a computer in here that's trying to then take those raw signals and encode them back onto a video, right? So the system breaks down quite rapidly when you're using something like this to take any kind of meaningful audio. So just keep that in mind, that the audio signatures that you see from the site are probably not indicative of what it actually sounded like there. Anyway. As far as acting alone, I am of the opinion that there are too many coincidences for this person to be acting alone. There's some very strange occurrences that indicate precisely the opposite. You can go all over the map with this, but it comes down to there were perfectly timed incidences in the crowd that suggest that they were not reactionary for distraction. Let's be real here. There are very strange coincidences that may not be coincidences with certain people involved in that crowd. And I don't want to speak out of turn because as inept as they are, the FBI has a job to do when it comes to those particular people and whether they were involved. The one thing that I do think is very strange is the dude sending a Discord message to his boyfriend saying, "Hey, will you go get my rifle?" That is abnormal. Describing where the rifle was, how to go get it, what it looks like, all that sort of stuff. That is not the behavior of somebody. You just don't lead with that. Hey, will you go get my rifle? It's here. Next to a site of somebody who is just the victim of a gunshot. You do not send that sort of thing to someone who you do not believe would have the reasonable expectation of knowledge of an incident. So I got serious questions about the receiver of those messages. Now, they turned those over and they're supposedly cooperating with police. We'll see how that shakes out. But I would be shocked if there isn't some kind of link there. Now, when it comes to the casings, there are some of these that I don't really get. There are other ones that I do. The Hey, fascists, catch this with the up and down arrows I get. Okay. So the up and down arrow sequence has to do, I never played Helldivers, but it has to do, it's a Helldivers reference, and it has to do with calling in some sort of artillery support. Okay. That's what that has to do. But then the hey fascist catch this, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The bulge thing supposedly has something to do with furry culture. I'm unwilling to go any deeper and figure out what that is. All right. Because quite frankly, I don't want that stuff showing up on my feed. Okay? I have particular things that I enjoy partaking in, and that is not one of them. And I would prefer not to have that on any of my feeds. My Instagram feed is already screwed up enough as it is. I don't need that sort of stuff on my feed. The Bella Ciao one, a very interesting video that you should go see. Okay, somebody gave me the specifics of this. Hang on. It's Helldivers 2. It's the 500 kilogram call-in. It's not explicitly political, just a gamer thing. Yes, there are two messages in one there. Okay. Hey, fascist, catch this. Right? And then the 500K call-in is a, like, hey, this is a big deal. It's coming to you. So there's two messages kind of molded into one. People are trying to make that out to be like, oh, it's an apolitical video game reference. No, it's a video game reference because we know that he was very immersed in video game references or video games, which I like video games. So it's not the game's fault, for sure. Definitely not the game's fault. And anybody who's saying it is dumb. But it is merged with the Antifa messaging, which Antifa writing stuff all over the side of their weapons and ammo, kind of a thing, right? But then on top of it, the Bella Ciao stuff. And there's a video by Metatron that you should go watch because he's an Italian. He has legally emigrated to the United States. He does historical stuff, and he does a dive of what the Bella Ciao thing actually means from a historical perspective. And then, of course, we know how that has been appropriated into the Antifa fight song, basically, is what that is. That's one of the things that they do, right? So, absolutely, the messaging is a mix of video game culture, leftist rhetoric, and immature, chronically online individual that's been radicalized. And radicalized, going back to my open, which was the continuum of life, liberty, pursuit of property, radicalized by folks that use video game streaming to propagate their political messaging. They exist. We know who they are. They say things like, these people ought to be X, Y, or Z, blah, 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 and they'll give a whole big tirade, and then they'll say, oh, in Minecraft. Or, oh, in Call of Duty. Or, something like that. Because, again, they know where the line is. They cannot call for a particular thing. It is a broad, undirected, continuous raising of tempo. You raise that tempo hot enough, long enough, somebody's going to do something. Particularly when you've got people that are not all that intelligent, emotionally invested, And that is the game. That is the game plan. That is what they have been doing for far too long. And there has to be a mechanism where we can preserve liberty, pursuit of property, but also protect people's life who are out there expressing their liberty. Sorry, I drained my drink and that's all the last I've got. So, I see several messages in the chat here about video games and all that sort of stuff. Video games has nothing to do with this. This is a scapegoat that is used by people that don't understand it. It's complete and utter bullshit. Video games have nothing to do with people going out there and doing bad stuff. I've had violent video games my entire life. Now I get to play considerably fewer violent video games these days because of work and all that sort of stuff. But there's like, again, another continuum of like, is it the gun's fault or is it mental health's fault? And then in the middle, you've got these people, these fucking old fucking retards that shouldn't be in, I can't say that. Oh my God. No, we're probably far enough into the stream where that's not going to get picked up. I might have to go cut that out later. I'm nervous about that one. You got these people that have no business being in office anymore. And they're either super pro gun control or they're super like, we got a mental health problem. And then in the middle, you've got this scapegoat, which is the video game culture. And they're saying that just because they don't understand it, they point to that thing and it's like, look at all these violent video games, what they're doing to our children. No, that is only one facet. I would say that what's going on in this country is a lack of parenting. And we've just ceded the educational system to be our babysitters on a regular basis. We hand our kids off to these places of learning and they go get indoctrinated. And part of that whole thing when it comes to that continuum of life, liberty, and pursuit of property thing is while these people have control of our youth, they push this ideology onto them. They know the legal limits of being able to do that. They're insulated by the educational system. They're insulated by the institutions of higher learning. They're insulated by the media. They're insulated by all of the government institutions that work to keep these people where they are, and they're insulated by the unions. So when we've got a consistent failure across the board to invest in our young people, and you hand them over to these indoctrinators all day, every day, it's not much of a shock to see a disconnect from reality. And while there might be some kind of correlation between those sort of things, just because somebody goes and plays some kind of violent video game does not mean that they've got some kind of disassociation going on in their personality where they can't tell the game from the reality. That is such an idiotic take that it does not survive continuous scrutiny of logic. What we've got here is a bunch of people that have accrued positions of power that continuously raise the rhetoric, continually pack these ideas into people's heads, lie to them directly about what the truth is. Going back to the Charlie Kirk situation, I have never seen a video where Charlie Kirk espoused anything close to what the left said that he was. To me, although I wasn't a continuous consumer of his content, he always seemed as though he was pretty respectful, had a open and honest debate. And while he could be stern in some instances on his points, he was not somebody out there spewing hate. But the people that controlled the narrative said that that's what he was doing. And they continually ratcheted that rhetoric up until we got what we got. There has to be a mechanism in there to correct for that while still maintaining life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and respect for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Guys, I'm tired. Guys, gals, I'm tired of this. I'm sure that this will not be the end of the discussion about this investigation. All I'm saying is that right now, a lot of the information that we currently have does not make sense. The concept that you've got a giant bowl with a subject at the bottom of it, and there was not a single person on an elevated position watching any roofs. They talk about, I've seen some folks get on and talk about, oh, well, personal security detail and local police and, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nobody went up and stood on the high ground in this instance, in the attempted assassination on the President of the United States. Not a single person. I've seen the argument about drones and stuff like that. Drones are a little bit problematic. Takes a lot of, as somebody who's studied to do drone stuff, it takes a lot to fly drones over people. And I understand maybe that one. Security forces, though, like the concept that, like, if you take it all the way back to the Secret Service and the Donald Trump situation, like the concept that they didn't have a drone in the air blows my mind. The local police didn't have if the local police are working on a thing, much easier for them to be able to get all that sort of stuff put together than a private security team. I don't know, man. There's a lot of things that do not make sense on this one. And my sincere hope is that a lot of the inconsistency that we have with the information that we have now is there for the purposes of advancing some kind of investigation. Where they've got this information and it's out there, and it's there to kind of put various parties that they believe were involved at ease, so they slip up and do something and they can roll them up. I'm willing to accept that that's a possibility. But at this juncture right now, none of the shit that we talked about here today makes any fucking sense whatsoever. I've done my best to try to come up with things without going super conspiracy, because I guess that is the lesson here, is in the absence of information that is credible, because what we currently have is not credible, people will make up their own shit. And I've tried to do my best to stay well out of the, like, these people from this country did this and that one over there. But I walked as close as I was willing to get to that line, because once you get over that line, it gets real screwy real quick. I don't know, folks. My serious concern is that this is one of those things that is going to be one of those 50-year conspiracy theory drivers that we have no clue about. We still don't know anything about crooks. The douche canoe that got his head canoed at the at Butler, PA. Still don't have any information on that dude. And we are almost a year from there. Think about that. Anyway, you guys have been awesome today, filling this one up. I guess what I would say is thank you for tuning in today. I will have more updates as they come out, but again, I'm a little bit, as a content creator, I have a thing about profiting from someone else's misfortune in this capacity. Now, if you're talking about somebody losing their job or something like that over making fun of Kirk or calling for continued violence, yeah, I will make money off of that person's misfortune all day long. But when it comes to this sort of thing, I've been very limited on it because, and that's why I kind of rolled it all into a live stream this week, because I didn't want to make 10 videos on this. I didn't want to do it because it was hard enough to do this today. So I thank you guys very much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you next week on